Hi. Um, I won't say too much here on the front end. I will get looking at the exploratory, or I'm sorry, the synthesis page and the synthesis plan. These are two very related assignments, but basically two different stages. So I won't say too much about these. I'll go over the assignment sheet briefly. But just know that one of them is designed to kind of think about the structure of your synthesis and make sure that some of those questions on the flowchart in the introductory are answered. Do your sources match up with your topics and stuff like that? And the other one is just forcing you to write. And as I mentioned on that flowchart, it's really important to draft things to make sure you know what you want to do in this. So as we look at those assignments, keep that in mind. The main goal of these is, one of these is worth not that many points. It's mostly designed to make you start thinking about that synthesis, so that when you're getting to Module 6, the synthesis at some level, hopefully, might even be drafted before you get to Module 6. So all you have to concentrate on in that last module is revising and editing. Hopefully, I don't see very many of you using the Writing Center this quarter. Hopefully for some of these projects you will, but especially for that synthesis in Module 6. That's the killer. Everything needs to be as perfect as possible. So let's take a look at, first we'll look at the synthesis plan, and then we'll look at the synthesis page. Okay? The synthesis plan is a relatively sophisticated assignment. It's asking you basically to think through the structure of your synthesis paper. And what that's going to do is ask three parts. One, write an introductory paragraph. That paragraph's main design is to orient the reader into what your world is, the main topic and how that's introduced. The second part is to create a thesis, a single sentence or maybe a tightly linked pair of sentences that basically, as this notes here in section 2, that governs or plans your paper structure. Note here, one of the reasons I'm asking you to do this now is that you have some time to rethink your thesis as you move forward, as you draft and as you prepare for the exploratory synthesis. So the work that you do here, it could end up becoming the work that you do in your exploratory synthesis for the final module. At the same time, this could be work that you use just as part of the drafting process. So whatever you come up with a thesis now is something specific to the synthesis plan, but may or may not be part of your synthesis. And then finally, the third section, which is the most important, and in some ways, if you can do the third section first, the other stuff might write itself, is where you actually start to think about the references and research that you have. So note here, the third section is a preliminary outline of topics and sources you are considering for your paper. Again, this is a plan. It doesn't mean this is going to be exactly what happens when you finally write your synthesis. You're asked to provide 4 entries, and I'll show you what those entries look like. But the important thing about them is each entry will be a minimum of 2 sentences, maximum of 4 sentences, and contain 2 sources. Your goal for this is to introduce possible topics that you can pull out of the sources that you have that are related to the topic that you're introducing in your opening paragraph. I'll just look briefly at the assignment sheet. Here are the grading criteria. Grading criteria, note here, it's a 70-point assignment, so there is some significant material in here, but it's not meant to be very difficult. For section 1, you're creating an open or an introductory paragraph which does these main things, right? A clear topic, which becomes focused. You have the author and authority or title of a key text introduced. That key text in some level connects with the main terms or ideas, so this topic, the key text are introduced. And if the thesis is present in that opening paragraph, it provides a clear one. If it's not, then basically the idea is that the paragraph comes to an end with a sense of transition, that you can tell it's moving into a new direction. And then, of course, this makes sense. Sentences are connected and show a logical progression. So one sentence connects to the one after it, and we got to see your line of thinking. Of course, the second section then is a thesis, and this will be a single sentence or a pair of closely linked sentences. Make sure it fulfills all this criteria. Pretty significant stuff. And then the outline, which is section 3, were the 4 entries, each entry containing 2 sources, and we'll look at those on the sample in just a moment. And then finally, of course, is making sure everything is following the particular rules of standard written English for an academic environment. So proper MLA formatting, because that's our style guide for this particular class, that it's formal, free of cliche and imprecise words. Pronoun perspective, no second person pronoun, of course. These are things that are consistent with all the assignments from now on out. And no contractions. And the regular group of errors and issues like that. Let's take a look at the sample, and it'll make a lot more sense of this. Note here, section 1, I won't spend a ton of time on this. You're welcome to look at this. But it's an opening paragraph which introduces, say, a particular general topic, which becomes a more specific topic, public art in cities, that introduces a key text, some information about the author of that text or the title. I think authority usually has more weight, but you're welcome to use the titles too. And then an idea from that key text. And then this particular one, it does end with a thesis statement. You don't always have to have your thesis statement at the end of the opening paragraph, but at some level we're programmed to look for it there. So that's the opening, right? Pretty simple structure. Make sure that you at least put together this way. The second section then is just a restatement of what you think your thesis statement is. So that may already appear here. Note that this thesis statement is just copied and pasted here. So that's sections 1 and 2. Section 3 is where the most work comes in. And this is asking you to write some sophisticated practice for your synthesis. You're doing 4 of these little blurbs here on a minimum. You can go beyond 4 if you like. And each blurb contains at least 2 things. I'll just look at the first one so you can see exactly what's going on in each of these 4. So Sussman believes, attributive tag, that the voice and style of an artist is essential. She contends that the, quote, individuality of expression is what makes art art. Citation, of course. However, Fleming and Goldman contend that this artist's first perspective undermines the experience and meaning of public art. Note here what's happened. In 3 sentences, this person has introduced one source, an idea from that source, of course with proper attribution and citation, and then in this case, however, a contrasting or contradictory second source. And this allows us to think about, here's one topic that might be possible for this paper, something that theses predict, right, that whether the individuality of expression makes art art. So that's one possible topic, probably a paragraph within this paper, at least one paragraph. And you can see how this gets done in all 4 of these examples. In this particular case, 2 sources, Nicotine and Fleming. In this one, we have Fleming and Goldman and Nicotine. In this particular one, we have Spade and Nicotine again. So 2 separate sources using ideas or topics from that. And you can see right here what you have basically done is created 4 possible topics for your paper. And that allows you to know, do your thesis and your topics agree? Do you have enough sources? Do you need different sources? And that's really the value of the synthesis plan. Okay, now that we looked at that, let's take a very brief look at the synthesis page. Okay, the synthesis page is exactly what it sounds like. I'm asking you to start drafting your synthesis. And this is a very simple breakdown. You've either done it or you haven't. But note here how it is. It's 30 points. It's not a major assignment, but it's just saying draft your synthesis. Begin. And just turn in the first page. So same things that we talked about with synthesis plan, an opening paragraph that introduces a clear topic, even if that topic is general, that the paragraph moves from that preliminary general topic to something more specific. The paragraph would introduce your key text, and of course at least the author and author authority. You're welcome to include the title if you like, but not necessarily. The paragraph should select at least one idea from the key text, and then the final step in this is that the paragraph should include a preliminary thesis. However, if your paragraph ends without a thesis on it, you don't have to impose a thesis. Just make sure that the paragraph concludes with a suggestion of where the next paragraph will begin. So by the end of that paragraph, like all good paragraphs, it should kind of say, and this is the direction for the next paragraph. And of course, it wouldn't be me if I didn't pay a little bit of attention to the writing style. This can be drafty. So don't think it has to be really refined. If it's a complete mess, the most you can lose on it is 5 points. So try and make it as clear and specific as possible, but don't worry about making it perfect. Chances are most of you will probably get 4 points on this with at least a readable one. If you want to put the extra time and make it a 5-pointer on this section, you're welcome to. But note that that's not a huge section of this. I want to see the concept and logic of your opening. Note that this page, though, it doesn't necessarily stop at the opening paragraph. If your opening paragraph is huge and goes over a page, I won't even see the end of that paragraph. But if the paragraph concludes and the next one begins, I want you to start the next paragraph. So let's take a look at the sample. This sample here is an annotated sample, which means that I left notes, and this is how it's going to appear to you on Canvas. But again, this is the same basic structure that we've seen in some of our other sample papers, Introduction to the Key Assignment. So I'll let you look through these notes. These are just reinforcing what you are. But notice here that unlike the synthesis plan, this doesn't stop at the end of the first paragraph. It keeps going. It stops here at the end of the first page, even if that first page cuts off. That's all I want to see. Can you write an opening paragraph, cover these main ideas, do some sort of concluding thesis or something like that. And if you start a next paragraph, I'm kind of looking at where your instincts are. The feedback on this will be relatively minimal. I just want to see what your thought process is, and if there are any major issues that stand out, then I can kind of talk to you about them before they show themselves up in the synthesis paper. But really, my suggestion for modules 4, 5, and 6, or for these two modules, is that just write your thesis or your synthesis. Go look ahead, draft out a copy of your synthesis, spend 2 hours writing, as I mentioned earlier, and then you got this. This will build itself, and likewise, your synthesis plan should be pretty easy to extract from there because you'll have paragraphs that should have 2 sources each, etc., etc. All that information is in the exploratory synthesis video, which I do urge you to watch, even if it's long, before you go into the plan and page. So that's all I have on this one. Please let me know if you have any questions. Thanks.